I'm Marcus White, leader of Everyone is God, Britain's most visionary political party. I want to solve every problem in Britain, and I want to see everyone fulfilled. This is a podcast of hard questions. See me cross-examined. Do I have the answers? Do I really have a plan that works? Ask your questions and decide for yourself. I'm Marcus White, leader of Everyone is God, Britain's most visionary political party. I want to solve every problem in Britain, and I want to see everyone fulfilled. This is a podcast of hard questions. See me cross-examined. Do I have the answers? Do I really have a plan that works? Ask your questions and decide for yourself.
Rightio. Good afternoon, good people. You're watching the Everyone is God political podcast. I am joined with two guests today. Introduce yourself, guys. Let's start with the lovely lady.
Hi, I'm Rosie Morell, and I'm ambassador of Everyone is God political party. And shall I talk about my role, or?
Well, we'll get on to that. I'm Marcus White, leader of Everyone is God, Britain's most visionary political party.
Okay, and we have an interesting show. Obviously, when I first met you guys were talking about sex positive party, and I was like, what are these guys on about? Do they really have the answers to all the problems? Can they really solve everything? Let's kick straight off with this, guys, if you don't mind. Marcus, you're the leader of the party. Rosie, what is your role?
So, like I just said, I'm ambassador for human relations, but I am also a sex and relationship therapist and a sexual performer. So that means I'm a sex worker. I've got a degree in psychology, and I used to teach A-level psychology. And my role in the party is linking everything to do with what plays out in human life and politics. So it's our psychology, our family life, and our sex life. These are all things that we are doing every single day. And my role in the party is to merge all of that together, and politics, because so many people are disconnected from that aspect of politics sometimes.
Okay, interesting. And Marcus, is sex relevant to politics?
Well, it's an interesting question. We believe it's highly relevant, and I want to very quickly try and explain why that is. So the first thing is that you can't resolve the political problems we have unless you resolve human nature first. Politics is not driven by politics, it's driven by human beings. And human beings are driven by their psychology, and at the root of psychology is sex. So unless we link up this chain from sex through psychology and into politics, unless we make that link, we're never going to solve the problems we have, because we're going to be driven by things we don't understand, and we're going to make these decisions that are imbalanced. So sex is our primary driving force. The force to procreate is the primary driving force throughout humanity, and obviously through all of life, and it deeply drives us through all aspects of our life. It drives us to seek power, because alpha males seek power so that they'll be able to mate with the females. This is the way it works from an evolutionary point of view. So politicians are inherently driven by sex, whether they realize it or not. It's the primary driving force in their political ambitions. And, I want to give a very extreme example of this to try and show how relevant this is. So consider Trump's decision to go to war with Iran. Now, the reason he's doing that from a psychological perspective, an aspect of this is that he's trying to demonstrate power. Why is he trying to demonstrate power? Well, because this attracts females. And this is how it goes straight back to sex. So sex is a primary driving force in males' decisions to demonstrate power. It's an absolutely primary force in these decisions. And unless we unravel all of this and we start to understand how sex and psychology plays out in politics, we're never going to unravel these decisions and understand whether these are good decisions or not, because we'll be blindly driven by our instincts. So this whole psychology is crucial to understand. And, it runs through all our relationships, not just our political ones. It runs through our romantic ones, our working relationships, all aspects of life. There's this underlying force driving it of sex and psychology. So we believe it's absolutely central. It's the key to unlock the decisions we make and how we run the world.
Oh, we've got a question come in.
Okay.
Thank you, Nigel Shayla. He says, hi, Rosie. Marcus is a very lucky guy. Thanks, I'll tell him that. So, Rosie, as deputy leader and of the Everyone is God party, where do you think both Labour and Conservative... This is Viceroy. Where do you think both Labour and Conservative have most badly failed in Britain, and how would you approach to fix it?
We're not here to criticise other parties, but as a general rule, one of the things we would say is that the parties don't go deep enough. If politics is to resolve the problems we've got and politicians are to do this, you've got to go deeper. And that's what we're about. And that's one of the reasons why we're talking about sex and psychology today, exactly. Because this is one of the areas where you have to go a lot deeper and start unpicking what's happening. So
we like to talk about real fundamental truths as well, which a lot of politicians don't like to go to that level, and how actually we're all responsible for our life choices. And Marcus always says this: the government can't solve everyone's problems. Everyone needs to take responsibility for themselves. And if we want to take people on that journey of actually understanding themselves properly. And that is what my role is going into literally who you are as a person, because fundamentally, your relationship with yourself is the most important relationship you will ever have on this planet. Not your parents, not your children. It's your relationship with yourself. So if you manage that and understand yourself fully, all the relationships you have outside of yourself, your parents and your children, who are very important to you, will harness a good relationship with them. So that is we've got over 30 policies that talk about this. It's a very deep philosophical message we have.
Well, it's also a practical message. We're trying to go to the root of problems. And, this is, again, one of the areas we feel that the parties fail. They don't go deep enough to get to the root of the problem. Only when you get to the root of the problem does the answer become obvious, simple, and you can action it to solve the problem forever. So, there's lots of things we would disagree with the other parties, but really we speak for ourselves and we don't want to be criticising the other parties all the time.
Yeah, I mean, that's very interesting. I did tell you guys this was about sex and politics, and Marcus's party goes deep. Marcus goes deep. So let's move on, Marcus. I understand you guys have done a lot of research into this, because this is going to be fundamental. People are going to be challenging you on this stuff. You guys have done a lot of research on this. Can you tell us a little bit about the research that you've done?
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, I've got background in psychology. I've got a postgraduate in secondary education. So I love research. I love understanding people. And today I've worked with over 1,000 male clients. So I've been a sexual performer and a sex therapist for nearly 7 years. And I've collected confidential, anonymous data on my clients. I work within the UK data protection laws. So I found this research very insightful about male sexual behaviour, but also female sexual behaviour, because I haven't worked with as many women, but I have worked with a good few women as well. And that actually helps us write our policies.
Yeah. So what we've been doing with this data collection is, like Rosie said, she's a sex therapist and performer, and we've collected data on her clients, over 1,000 men. And what we do is, whatever interests and fetishes they present with, we just log them in categories. And one of the things this has shown is that, human sexuality is really very outside the boundaries of what we say it should be and what the social norms are. Our sexual behavior and the things we're presented with by these clients, who are from all walks of life, everything from the sort of the famous and the professionals right down to your everyday man, who works in whatever industry. So one of the things that's overwhelmingly obvious from our data is how diverse and how outside of human expectations our sexuality is. And all of this needs unraveling for the reasons I've explained. I explained that chain of how you come from sex through psychology and then into human behavior and politics. That whole chain, if we're to understand that, we've got to unravel human sexual behavior. And, our data is helping us do that, and it guides a lot of our thinking and policies.
Okay. And some people might say, this isn't like, people have always had fetishes since the beginning of time. Some people might say, do we need to, is there any real need to sort of go down this line of stuff and have it as a fundamental part as your party as well, where you're speaking about some people will be that, we speak about, some people are a little prudish when it comes to sex, especially in England. We're very prudish. We don't want to hear about it. Most recently, I think we spoke about it before, the Restore politician that got booted out because it found out that he was actually performing in the sexual industry. So it's demonized, this kind of behavior.
Right. Can I just say, because you're picking up, these people, all these sexual scandals, they're in politics, they're in all walks of life. This is immediately just one indicator of how powerfully sex drives people, because they're prepared to lose their entire career over it. That's how powerful it is. And as I explained with Trump, is demonstrating standard behavior that many leaders will demonstrate, this macho behavior to attract mates. This is, can you see how powerful this force is? We can't just ignore this and pretend it's not there. It is the primary driver of human beings. So unless we start acknowledging this and understanding it and educating around it, we're never going to resolve our behavior, because we'll be blindly driven by these instincts to make unbalanced decisions. So this is the chain we're trying to explain to people, and it's central in our politics.
Yeah.
Okay. Holly Jane, come on, be real. Why would any serious political party recruit sex workers as candidates instead of actual professionals with real skills? A harsh one, but...
Oh, okay. Well, this is a good question, actually, and something that I'm quite passionate about. So, the sex industry as a whole has this stigma that it's not a real job. And I see that on so many comments. We've got people like Bonnie Blue and Lily Phillips, who are big names in the sex industry, and they do not represent the average sex worker. They push their things to the extreme, but they are still doing a proper job. They shouldn't. I've seen loads of like really horrible comments written about them saying, oh, they don't even work, they just lay on their back. No, they still, yes, they've made it and they've done well for themselves, and I applaud them for that. I don't necessarily agree with how they've done it, but I applaud them for that, and they are doing a proper job.
Well, I think we're framing this more broadly. We're saying the sex work industry itself it's the old, it's called the oldest industry on earth, and there's a reason why, because particularly men, but also women, have a need of this service, and it's a profound and widespread need. Figures show that over 95% of men have watched porn. You just can't ignore a psychological force of this magnitude and expect to understand humanity and resolve humanity in politics. It's completely naive. So the sex work industry, it's without being designed to, it's trying to address this fundamental need in human beings that isn't being met. And it's a very important need. Our need for sex is similar to our need for sleep and food. It's a primary need.
It's exactly.
Now, if you don't have an industry that's educated and supported and regulated to support such a important part of human life, you're going to have problems, and we want to resolve those problems. So but as human beings, we're taught to sweep sex under the carpet, pretend we're not doing all these things in our bedroom, pretend we don't have these desires. And then what happens? Because we're pretending so much and we're not being honest about it, we start having affairs, and there's scandals, and we throw away our careers over it, and all this sort of stuff. This needs straightening out. You cannot have a human race that's fully conscious and making highly conscious decisions that are serving humanity if we're going to just ignore all of this. You'll never do it. So that's our position as a party.
And also, I look back through history, okay? In the 1800s, which isn't really that long ago in our history of being human, we used to say children should be seen and not heard. And the upper classes used to have wet nurses. So these were people like milking babies, not the actual mothers. And now we understand so much more that actually those early years of a child's life are crucial, and you shouldn't, we've got social workers and healthcare workers now saying to new mothers, you should try and breastfeed your baby for at least the first 6 months, because it's so important. So it's literally flipped around. We've gone from children just being children and just like disregarding them, to understanding this deep psychology needs to be nurtured. It's the same with sex. We need to understand it. We need to regulate it. We need to sort of nurture that industry so we can protect the vulnerable and understand how fundamental it is in society. And that's what we're about.
I mean, it's interesting. You mentioned Bonnie Blue. I suppose we've got to go there, really. Marcus, you are Prime Minister. Marcus, how would you deal with the sort of, some people would say, the scandals, the outrageous sort of things that are going on with Bonnie Blue, 1,000 men in one day, before you answer that, we have to, because obviously I'm pro women that do their thing and they're enjoying their work, whatever it is, it's safe. There is a youth now of young girls looking up to people like Bonnie Blue and Lily Phillips. So some people see them as very, very dangerous. I personally know young girls that have nearly thrown their lives away by going down this route, because there's no guarantee. If you sleep with 100 men, 1,000 men, there's no guarantee you're going to become Bonnie Blue or Lily Phillips. Most girls are doing these things and just ruining their lives. And I know girls that have gone down that route and, made real regrets. So Marcus, I really want you to think about this one. How would you deal with this?
So there's three issues here. Okay. Now, the first thing is, characters like Bonnie Blue and these very controversial characters, what they're showing everybody is they're highlighting the need for education. because unless we educate our children about sex and relationship, they will never have the tools to know how to deal with these extreme characters that are being presented to them through social media. And they're going to go and watch porn. We know this. There's no doubt about that. So they won't have the tools to be able to process porn and understand it and understand, how to approach their sex lives and do it in a responsible way that's consensual. So you see, people blame the porn industry all the time. But as we've said, we are a party that wants to go deeper. And the root of the problem is not porn. It's the lack of education. Children are not equipped with how to conduct their sex and relationships in their life. They have very, very little training on this. Sex education is more about, if they have any, it's about how not to catch sexually transmitted diseases and how not to get your partner pregnant. Yeah. That doesn't constitute a fully balanced sex education. No. So I think the first thing is that characters like Bonnie Blue are highlighting to us is we need to equip our children with the right knowledge and understanding of this so they can make informed, balanced decisions that serve them. And like you say, so these girls aren't trying to emulate her and it's not working for them. They need to learn how to make this decision process for themselves. The second point is, with Bonnie Blue, she highlights a number of issues. And the second thing is the issue of freedom. Now, most people say they believe in freedom. This is very stringent. If you believe in freedom, it means you're 100% happy to allow any adult to do what they want with other consenting adults, as long as it doesn't harm anybody else, do whatever they like without any judgment on your part. Mm-hmm. And here's the thing with freedom. Many people say they want it, but they don't actually act it out, because freedom means you don't judge other people for doing whatever they want within those boundaries of consenting adults and no harm to others. So we're very passionate about this. We believe in freedom. We believe in free sexual expression. If somebody wants to sleep with 1,000 men in a day, that is between her and the 1,000 men. And if they're not harming anybody, they should be allowed to do that without any judgment. This is freedom. It's that simple. It's not for anybody else to judge what choices people make, as long as it's consenting adults and it's non-harmful to others. So I think that's the second point. Now, there's a third point where I feel Bonnie Blue has crossed a line. And that is, from what I understand on the media, she had an encounter. She slept with 400 men, unprotected sex, and became pregnant from this encounter. Now, there's an issue other than freedom here, and that is parenting. And we're very big on parenting. Now, in that setup, it appears, and I haven't spoken to Bonnie Blue. I don't know all the facts, but it appears that the father isn't going to be known and therefore probably won't be present to parent this child.
Well, she did get, I did some research on this. So apparently she got the DNA samples of all of the men, and will contact them when she finds out when the baby's born.
Well, okay, if that's the case, then fair enough. But our position's very simple. If a man and a woman conceive a child, it should always be with the understanding that they're both committed to parenting that child. For that child's upbringing, the entire upbringing, they're fully committed to that. And this is an area where we feel maybe Bonnie Blue's crossing a line. Yeah. We don't know the facts, but if there's no firm commitment on the part of the father to parent that child, then we would have a problem with that.
Something I feel passionate about, I'm a sex worker, and I sort of understand what she's doing, but there's a lot, for me personally, she has crossed a line. She's pregnant and apparently having a golden shower instead of a baby shower, a golden shower while pregnant with, just to make porn, just to make something the next level, and all the understanding. And so I think she's probably a woman who does care, but she's just, I don't want to sound judgmental, but I think she's using her child, her unborn child, as a selling machine. And that is crossed the line for me. I'm like, if she was a man, would she be classed as a paedophile? Because she's literally pregnant, having random men urinate on her and then selling those videos. That is wrong. I personally, I feel a bit triggered about that. And
I think
yeah.
knowing Bonnie Blue, knowing the kind of stunts that she's pulled already, she's not ready to have a baby. I don't believe. I believe that she's owning, and to be honest with you, I think she even struggles. There's a sad story actually. That one of the reasons that actually sent her into the industry is that she had the perfect life, perfect everything, situation going on, relationship, job, partner,
Yeah.
and then she wasn't able to conceive, and that really, there in that documentary that I watched, that was something where I saw a kind of different side to her,
Mm,
and if she was able to have a child, that we wouldn't know Bonnie Blue as we know her today. Like, I think no matter what, she still would have been famous because of her work rate and the stuff that goes into it. But I feel like with this kind of stuff that's going on, I feel like, yes, people have freedom, people can do what they want. That means an 18-year-old girl can come out and say, right, I'm gonna start sleeping with hundreds of men. And if you have a society where 18-year-old girls are looking at Bonnie Blue as a role model, I feel like you're going to start to see a decline in society, unfortunately, if 18-year-old girls aren't looking at police women, aren't looking at nurses, aren't looking at, like, even just being professional women, being boss women, whatever it is, but looking at Bonnie Blue, because it's easy. You open your legs to 100 men. There's men out there, as we know, that are willing to do pretty much anything. I mean, even the logistics of getting 1,000 men, 100 men together to go and queue up in a line and actually sleep with them, that suggests that there's some mental health issues there with those guys, or they've gone off the edge.
Well,
but I disagree. It's not easy, Brad. Like, being a sex worker is not easy, and I know it looks easy, but I am emotionally, it might be easy for some women, but for me, I deeply care about every single man I've ever worked with. And I've worked with a lot of men on the webcam, and
Yeah.
I get invested in them, and I want to help them. I want to deliver a very good show, a very good session. I'm very professional, and Marcus is my mentor, and he has helped me understand male psychology more than a book ever could. And I do, in my emotional capacity, that's where I've learned the most. And I think from that perspective, which people don't understand about the sex industry and where the education needs to come in, that's where it's hard for a sex worker. Emotionally, the toll it can take on you if you want to do well, and if you want to, you want to help people and be successful.
Yeah.
I'm not, I earn 30,000 a year. I don't earn hundreds of thousands, but I care, and I do have regular clients paying me hundreds of pounds an hour, and I'm grateful for that. But I put the effort in. I've got that consistency and that training, and that's what we would like to do for young
I think
women.
one of the things we found, and we see it regularly with Rosie's clients, you see, one of the aspects that isn't understood about the sex industry is that it's actually a form of healing.
Yeah.
It's a healing modality. Mm-hmm. And, many people comment on the sex industry who aren't in it and don't understand how it works. And one of the things, if you speak to escorts and sex workers, many of them will say that they're actually, giving comfort and healing and companionship to their clients, because these men are lonely, they're sexually lacking, and they want company, they want a loving relationship in some sort of form of loving contact with a woman. So I think people who don't engage in the industry, they have this very sort of cynical view of it, and much of it isn't like that at all. And for example, with Rosie's clients, over 1,000 men, almost entirely they're highly respectful, very polite, very caring towards Rosie, and many of them are coming for a deeper relationship, and her most regular clients will actually spend more of their time talking and wanting to get in a deeper understanding of themselves and their sexuality rather than actually her performing sexually for them.
Yeah.
So there's this whole world that's hidden because sex is taboo and the sex industry is taboo.
Exactly.
But when you start actually getting involved and researching it and finding out about the truth of human sexuality, you start to understand actually it's not like that. And it's a very important part of life that we've got to bring out into the open and resolve.
Yeah, I think it's a grey area. You know, obviously I'm pro women that work in the industry. I work in the industry myself, not hands on, but you know, I mentor several people in the industry. You know, lovely people. They work very hard. It's not easy. When I meant easy, I said, you know, the whole context of this was, you know, 18-year-old girls deciding that Bonnie Blue is their mentor and choosing to go down this route. And the reality of this
not
situation
easy.
is no, it's not that it's not easy. It's easy to find men. There are men that will go out and sleep with you for sure. That's not the issue here. The issue is,
But it's not easy to earn 100 grand a year just by opening your legs. You've got to work at it like in a certain way. That's what I meant.
No, but my point is that with this ends up with pregnancy. And it ends up with children being born out of wedlock. You know, this is what happens. These are the real stats. If you look at it, most of the time that these young girls get involved in this stuff, they will end up without their children. Often the case, some of them don't even end up with their children, and they'll end up with, you know, loads of situations. Because, you know, I was speaking about this with one of my clients the other day. Women in the industry are a target. They are a target because I feel like...
Target in what way?
They're a target by men that pretend that they want a relationship with them. There are men out there that will, you know, obviously most men appreciate a beautiful woman or a beautiful man or a beautiful trans man, whatever their thing is. Most men appreciate what they fancy, and when it comes to men specifically dating women in the industry, there's a perception out here, it's kind of the red pill kind of stuff as well, that you don't take a woman in the industry serious for a relationship. And whether we like it or not, I believe if you look at most men, the research that I've done into a lot of men as well, most of them wouldn't take a woman in the industry serious for a proper relationship. And there's different levels of it. Making videos, you know, then there's women that are escorting. There's different levels of it. It's difficult, but these women are a target. And then it becomes, some of them have a sense of, you know, they don't feel like they're worth anything. And then they sort of tolerate a lot more bad men come through the door. So there's a real dark side to this that I see on a regular basis.
Well,
I agree with you, Brad. One of my really regular clients, he's such a lovely guy. He's older now, but he said he feels like a really bad person because back in the day when he split up with his wife, he started seeing this escort and he actually really liked her. He sort of almost fell in love. But he said, I couldn't stomach taking her to my local pub because everyone knew she was the local escort. And he said, how bad is that? So he basically rejected a relationship with a woman that he actually really liked because he didn't want the stigma of being seen with a sex worker. And that's really sad.
And I think we're highlighting an absolutely fundamental issue, which is that we think we send so many messages out there that sex is bad in some way. And how can the act that creates life be bad? And there's so much sort of confusion and contradiction in our views around sex and so many judgments around it. And this does humanity a massive disservice. If we think sex is bad in some way, so, if you have a strong sex drive and you have sex with lots of partners, that's bad, or, you do it out of wedlock, or if you get paid to do it, it's bad. If we have all these judgments around sex, it's going to cause massive problems, and it does. And, it feeds through all of society, and it builds all these problems, like with scandals and people not being honest with their partners and not honest in their relationships and having unfulfilled desires and then trying to get those desires fulfilled in ways that aren't balanced. It just goes on and on and on. If you suppress a natural human desire and you label it as bad, you're going to create very fundamental problems through society.
Yeah.
So we want to unravel all of that and bring it out into the light. The work we do and the work Rosie does with her clients, it reveals the truth of human nature. We see the truth of human nature acted out every day. And because of that, we have this deeper insight into human beings, the reality of human beings, what we really are. And all of this has got to be brought into the light to balance it.
Okay, Marcus, I hope you've got some good policies to help with this, should you get in.
Yeah, so...
Yeah. And sorry, that relates to Viceroy. Sorry, haven't been ignoring your questions, guys. It's just because we've got a lot coming in. He asked us a very similar question. How does our policy regarding sex differentiate to the current Labour and Conservative, what they have on the agenda? So
we've got a sex and psychology policy, and I think there's a few key areas. The first thing is we want to see extensive education on sex and psychology through schools and into adult education. So all of this is, as I said, brought out into the light. People have a full understanding of their own sexuality, their own psychology, and how we are driven by our instincts and certain other forces in our life. And then that equips children to make the right decisions for them about sex and relationship as they get older. And it stops them becoming vulnerable to these very controversial influences. So the second thing is we're absolutely sex positive in that we promote free expression of all sexual orientations without judgment or shame. And that's, of course, as long as it's amongst consenting adults. And finally, we want to support, educate, and value the sex work industry. And regulation of it is crucial, and it needs to be a valued industry. It should be viewed similar to like other therapists, a physiotherapist or a counsellor
or a psychologist.
It's a profession that needs to be seen as an important job that has profound benefit to people, and it can be used as a form of healing and nurture and resolution for people who use those services. So we want to transform the whole paradigms around sex and the sex work industry and how we express it as human beings and how open we are about it.
Fascinating. I think it's one of these subjects that we could just go back and forth on and just continue. I mean, it's interesting. It's very interesting. And the fact that when people are labeled sex workers, it's like, wait a minute, is there nothing else to them? Like Rosie's a sex worker, she's also a therapist and all the rest of it. So there's loads more to people, and there's a very small aspect of, I don't think people are defined by what they do for a living. It's their actions, what they put out into the world. It's one of these things that we could talk about forever, and I'm pretty sure we'll do many shows on it, Marcus. But we have got a show on Thursday, Marcus, Monday actually now.
Yes, Monday, 1:00, our next show. We're going to be looking at morality and law and debating about how those two things relate and actually whether they should be brought into one system of moral law.
That's gone, Rosie.
Sorry, I've got a question. It's not about sex and politics, but it's quite a serious one. It says, "Hey, Marcus and Rosie from Tajwa, sorry, I can't pronounce your name. What's your honest opinion on the scale of Islamic immigration and its impact on Britain? And what bold policy would your Everyone is God party implement to address it?" It's quite a...
So our policy is very simple. We want to see balanced, legal immigration. We do want to stop the boats because this is an illegal entry into the country. And we don't believe this is the right way of bringing immigrants into the country. We want to bring an amount of immigrants that keeps our population stable or possibly slightly reducing, not growing, because Britain is overpopulated. And, we want to see when people come over, they come straight into jobs. They go quickly through a system. And if they're allowed in, they go straight into work. And everything's done straightforwardly. So there's no problems with people in hotels on the taxpayer. And, we just have a balanced system. We're not against people coming into the country, but we can't flood Britain with refugees and such like. We can't solve this problem for the world.
Yeah, I think that's a fair answer. I think, we are getting a lot of this sort of, I don't know what you want to call it. Islamophobia is probably how it's best described. There's a lot of people that feel that they, they don't even know. Most of the time they just see, unless you see someone pray, unless you see someone praying and they identify in the way Muslims pray or whatever, you don't know. I think we're seeing the dark. No, I don't know if it's the darker side of society, but we're seeing people that just don't like seeing the amount of brown and black faces. This is coming from Rupert Lowe himself. The amount of things that is coming out on social media with him, literally what he says, he is pushing it, and the people that are behind his party that are funding it. But this is one of those subjects, guys, that we can go
This
on
will be
and on.
another time.
Yeah, it's another topic.
We'll have to do it. But guys, it's been amazing. We've got the lovely Marcus and the lovely Rosie Morel in here, and they've been talking about their sex positive party. The details are always on the videos, guys. You can go to their website, find out more about their policies. Marcus and Rosie, anything you want to say before we go?
Well, remember, like we said, on Monday next week, 1:00, we're doing morality and law and how they overlap.
And I might be having more of an appearance on the podcast, talking about all of the juicy topics around sex and politics, because it's deep. It's a deep issue. So, yeah, I'll see you, and not on Monday, but another time.
Guys, thank you for joining us. We'll see you on Monday.
Okay.
Mwah.
Thank you, everyone, for watching. I'm Marcus White, leader of Everyone is Good.